Why should old acquaintance be? Okay, now, my name's Mark, and we're here for a dozen ideas about marketing your books wide. Show of hands, how many people are terrified of marketing and you don't know the first thing about marketing? Yeah, okay. How many of you are storytellers? Okay, marketing is storytelling, and you guys are good at storytelling, so that's one of the things I want to remind you of about marketing. Who is this bald man? This is marketing. This is an example of marketing. The reason I put this slide up here is to try to impress you with the fact that I'm apparently important and I know things, and I've gotten to hang out with cool people like Margaret Atwood and other award-winning authors, and that's really just blatant marketing. So that's a hidden idea for marketing, is that when you're about to begin a talk, when you're about to begin something, when you're about to begin a pitch for your book, you need to walk into it with confidence. A good friend of mine, James A. Owen, says, "Nobody ever inspired anyone else to greatness by pretending to be less awesome than they are." And you need to approach you talking about your books and you pushing forward and sharing your passion and enthusiasm for the stories you tell with that same thing, which is why I put this slide up here, to try to impress you and tell you that, yeah, apparently you invested your time in watching this and coming here. I'm going to try to give you that value, but it really is just a subtle marketing ploy. I've been in the industry for more than 30 years. I've been a writer since '92 when I started in the industry. My first book came out in 2004, before all the smart kids started self-publishing, and I've worked throughout the industry. That's just, again, another slide to try to impress with you that I may know a couple things. I don't know all the things, but it may impress you that I know a few of those things. But I'm going to start with some of the basics, which we've already talked about a little bit. And some of the basics are really your biggest obstacle, but also your biggest ally is mindset. And that's the fear of marketing, and that's the belief that I don't know how to market. The reality is, if you know how to tell a story, you know how to market. You can move people, you can share that passion, and that is a huge change, because it takes a long time for us to embrace that. But it can be a big hurdle, and we constantly think about it. And unfortunately, yes, most of us would rather be writing all the time, but actually deciding to invest a particular percentage of your day, of your time, of your week in marketing is going to be time that's probably going to be large at the beginning. It's going to go down, and it's going to fluctuate over time. It's going to change, and that's okay. And you're going to do the wrong things, and you're going to have to reinvest, and that's okay. We will make mistakes, we will get it wrong, but we're going to experiment a little bit. But just remembering that it's not consistently always going to be easier, because new opportunities and new ideas are going to take some more time, so that's okay. One of the other basics that we often forget about is the target audience, thinking about the ideal readers, or what on the traditional side of publishing we always say are the comp authors and the comp titles. And that is such an important value. If, when you want to sell your book, whether you're pitching it to a publisher, whether you're self-publishing, whether it's available now, or you're talking to people about your book, keep in mind who your ideal readers are. A lot of my books are horror related, so if somebody comes up and says, "I like sweet romance," it's a waste of my time to try to convince them they should pick up my horror novel, because if they pick up my horror novel, that's going to be a bad experience for both of us, because it's going to be a bad experience because they're going to think, "This guy sucks and I hate his writing." Well, of course you do. Sweet romance horror? Not necessarily something that crosses over very well. And it's going to be a bad experience for me, because they're going to tell everyone they talk to that Mark Leslie, the name I write under, he sucks. He can't write good, well, I can't write good sweet romance. Of course, I'm a horror author. And then they're going to give me the 1-star review as well. So focusing on that. So I want to look at some of the ideas for getting your comp authors, getting the comp titles. Going to the product page, obviously on a site like Amazon, where you can actually see. That's one of the ways of getting it. But don't just stop at Amazon, because there are different shoppers on different stores. Check out those also bots on the other retailers too. Check them out on Barnes & Noble. Check them out on Apple and Google and any of the other retailers, Kobo, just to get a breadth of titles. Because if you're only focusing your marketing on the also bots on Amazon, you may be missing authors who are on the other sites, the also bots on the other sites. And the other thing too is, because Amazon does have titles that are only on Amazon, you may not pick up some of those other titles that are published wide as well. So again, we're familiar with Amazon, most of us. We go to the item pages. We live and breathe on the rankings there. But just remember, you can go and check them out on some of the other sites. That's a really important, and it's a subtle mindset shift, because they may be featuring other titles, their algorithms may be feeding different titles, and you may miss out on a comp author or a comp title that's going to be important. Again, this is just a fundamental of marketing that you can take to the actual marketing that you end up doing. If you've ever, I'm a huge fan of Jane Friedman, of course, and in April, she even saw how you can use ChatGPT to find comp titles. And there's a really great article, if you Google Jane Friedman comp titles ChatGPT, she walks you through the process of how to find those comp authors, those comp titles from the bestseller lists. And it's a really ingenious way. And it's a way for us to leverage AI in a way that can save us a lot of some of that manual work, because you got to take everything that it does with a grain of salt, because it's not a smart human, it's a dumb computer, and it may be fed incorrect data, and that's going to lead to weird stuff. But that's okay, because in some of the platforms, you're going to find the wrong titles. And I thought I had a slide that showed that, but apparently I don't even know my own slides anymore, because I had to do it a week ago, and I've already forgotten what I put in the presentation. This is an example from my own experience with a book called Haunted Hamilton, which this was a traditionally published book, but the thought is the same. When I wanted to pitch, so Hamilton, Ontario, anyone from Ontario, Canada in the audience? Yay, woo! Okay, there you go. Hamilton, woo! So you're familiar with Hamilton then? Kind of like Pittsburgh of Canada, Steel City, where we process a lot of the steel in Canada. So I was living in Hamilton, and I wanted to pitch a book to Canada's largest independent publisher, Haunted Hamilton. What I did is I'm visual, so I do the Venn diagram. And I said, okay, this is going to be a book for people who love ghost stories, because it's going to be haunted stories from Hamilton, Ontario. This is also going to appeal to a different set of people who love history, because you can't tell a good ghost story without getting into history. And then it may also appeal to a group of people who are very passionate about the city they live in. They're very passionate about their town. They grew up there, their parents grew up there, they have a cousin who lives in Hamilton, makes a great gift. So any one of these groups of readers may fit in my audience, but where they cross over, somebody who is passionate and loves their city of Hamilton, people who enjoy ghost stories and also really enjoy history, that's my core audience, and that's where I want to spend the majority of my marketing on. It does not mean that people won't buy it just because, oh, it's a cool book about Hamilton and I want to buy a book about Hamilton. They will still buy it, but that's not where I'm driving any of my marketing efforts. I'm always focusing on that. So that's an important element. And then looking at the comp titles and authors. Now the other thing I looked at was in the market conditions, was there already a book about Hamilton ghost stories? No. Is there an active full-time ghost walk group? Well, there's 2 now, but there was 1 at the time. Yes, so there's a market for it, there's a desire for it. And then the other subtle thing, I was at an industry conference, which you're at, and I paid attention and I listened to what people say. And I heard an executive from Dundurn say, we've always wanted to publish a book of ghost stories about Hamilton. Now, those ideas don't always fall into your lap like that, but I pitched a book on that, so there you go. But all the timing fell into place, and I had to look at the market and share, here are some books of the books that some people might have already read. And that's just an example. I like to do multiple examples. This is a self-published title called Active Reader and Other Cautionary Tales from the Book World, Horror Stories or Twilight Zone-ish creepy tales about bookish places. So it may appeal to people who like creepy tales. It's going to appeal to people who enjoy short fiction, and then it may just appeal to book nerds in general. But again, that Venn diagram, and I like doing that. I do an actual sketch, and I write out some of those audiences and try to see where the overlap is. That's one of the ways of narrowing it down. You may only have 2, you may have 6. It doesn't matter, and you can experiment. I went with 3 for these because it was a lot easier visually. But again, what are the things that the people who might like this, what are they into? That's the comp. Those are the things to think about. So think about that when you're thinking about your marketing. If you can't go back and do that Venn diagram of the various people that you think might enjoy this for various reasons and look for those overlaps, you may want to go back and stop spending money on marketing until you better understand who is the ideal readers. Now, the hook is something that's really intriguing to me. And often at writers' conferences, in traditional publishing, I'll often help authors before they go to pitch to an agent. But sometimes when authors, they tell you about your book and stuff like that, at the Draft to Digital table where I am, I often ask them when we finish talking and they tell me about their book, as I said, did you ever notice the lean-in moment when you were talking about your book? When did did my eyes open up? Did I lean in? Did I feel like, did I look like I suddenly needed to know more? That's the thing to look for when you're practicing with friends, strangers, family, your teddy bear, whatever. The teddy bear may lean in, but that could be because it's haunted. But again, the whole idea is like looking for the moment where something you said is what appealed to them. There's probably something. Go back and ask them, what was it that I said that made you ask that question or lean in? Oftentimes, just like when we write our manuscripts, we start on page 1, but it really doesn't start till page 3 because we're clearing our throats. Sometimes in our marketing pitches, we do the same things. Do you see how marketing is very related to storytelling? Look for that moment where the inciting incident of the marketing, and that's something to look for when you're practicing that pitch. And it may take a while, and it's really, really important to practice. Again, those are just some of the basic things. I still think, and again, this is another basic thing we all know, but owning your own platform and owning your own brand is critical when you think about that. A landing page, an author page, whether it's a free page, potentially ideally if it's your URL, and I couldn't get markleslie.com because there's a rich guy from California who's a tech genius who owns markleslie.com, but I have markleslie.ca, maybe I could have gotten .org, et cetera, .net. This is just some examples of some folks, and all I did is I took a look for who's going to be at the conference, and I quickly Googled their names in image, and if I came up with something that really caught my eye, I just grabbed it and grabbed a snapshot and threw it out there. But this suggested to me, because I went to the Google and I found this, that these people have done some branding. They have landing pages that can draw me in because it probably appeals somehow to who they are, to their author brand, to what it is that they're writing. And so those are some of the things that you're going to look for when you think about the place that you own. Owning the website may just be a place to direct them to where they can buy your books. I like to say universal. I don't like to just think about Amazon only. I like to think about, from the reader's perspective, where do they want to buy their books. But having that on your own landing page is the ideal place. I'm going to share some free tools for that. But when you have them on your page, when you have them in a place that you control, is when you can do that most powerful thing that you can use, which is your author newsletter, because then you can reach out to them at any point in time. And again, you're not just reaching out to them to market to them, you're reaching out to them as a storyteller. You're reaching out to them to give them some value, to allow them an experience to connect with you, because ideally, maybe they signed up for your newsletter because you offered something for free, but they stay on your newsletter because they're interested in you and they want more of you. What are those things that you can do as a storyteller to keep them engaged so that when the next thing is available, while they're engaged, you can let them know about the work in progress or what's going on? Again, some really great resources online, amazing people who offer all kinds of free content online that you can check out. And I know that issue of Indie Author Magazine is an older one, but there are, as you know, other issues are available online as well. Author pages are the other thing. So website, hard to manage, lots of work, to do things. You can just have a simple landing page and you can take advantage of so many free tools out there. So some free author pages for wide publishing are Goodreads, right? You can create a free author page there, a landing page, and control things, and you can even have content in terms of Q&A, and people can interact with you there. You obviously are familiar, I'm sure, with Author Central, free landing page. Make sure, if you're going to do one for .com, do one for .uk, maybe do one for the various different countries, and maybe you might want to change them up depending on the market. So, for example, in the romance genres, bare-chested men are very popular on certain romance novels in the US, but in the UK, not necessarily. So that's the publishers identifying that different markets have different ways of approaching it. You may want to approach those different author pages. You also have Mark taking a drink. Other free sites that you can create author pages would be through Books to Read. You can create one on BookBub, and you can create one on, and I'm waiting for I think it's on the next slide, Crave Books has an author page as well that you can set up there, and I'll be talking a little bit about Crave Books and some of the other marketing tools you can leverage. But you can create lots of great landing pages that have, this is an example of BookBub on the one side that I can control. There's a Mark Leslie Lefebvre, the guy who talks about the business of writing and publishing, and this is the guy who writes urban fantasy and horror and stuff like that. But you can see the Crave Books page, you can see the BookBub page. You've got bookstoread.com with Draft2Digital, which is a free tool, and you don't need to publish through Draft2Digital to use it. I can have bookstoread.com/Mark Leslie. I can control my own custom carousels for my books, whether they're published by me or someone else. You can use that page if you're exclusive to Amazon, but of course if you use that page in a more broad way, I like to think of Books to Read or the Books to Read author pages as author central for all the stores, because you can be inclusive and you can include all of those stores. But you see the various carousels and the various, and I do write across some different genres. So again, that's a free tool. I learned from a thing earlier today is the free collections pages that BookLinker have created, right? So you've got BookLinker and you've got, what's the name of the other company? It's the name, yell it out, Jesse.
Genius Links.
Genius Links, because it's genius that you can actually have. And here's the thing that surprised me, is like, so how much does it cost to have a free collection page that I can control? And you see some great examples here that some of the authors have done. It's actually free, you don't need to pay for this. So you can have a collections page for your marketing if you're doing and there's really good gurus on Facebook and ads in that, even BookBub ads, stuff like that, driving people to those pages that you control. You control the merchandise and you control the look and feel. I've also taken advantage of some of the pages that are available through BookFunnel. Now, of course, I pay for that through my BookFunnel account, but I have access to, this is what I call my free taster pack with printed cards that I hand out when I'm doing book events, where they can download the short story that leads into the collection or the audiobook for free, both through the BookFunnel app. And again, just different ways that you can have landing pages that you can link to from your website, you can link to from QR codes, etc. And those are some of the ways you can market. Now, thinking about marketing wide, and this is a really powerful and this is a really important thing, but libraries. Libraries are still, many of us discovered our love of reading through libraries. Many of us had no access to books. The town I grew up in, the closest bookstore was an hour's drive away, but the library in my public school was my access to the rest of the world. Libraries are still that most demographic access for everyone. And when you're wide, your books can be available. Your ebooks can be available in library, and of course your print books can be available. But if you're coming out of Kindle Unlimited and you've trained people that they think they're getting their books for free, they're not. They're paying a corporation to get their books for free, but they're used to the idea of reading for free as much as they want. You can let them know, now everyone can get my books for free at the library. So if they've already been conditioned that way, that they can still enjoy your books. They may have to do a little bit more work, but if they care about you and they want to continue to read your books for free, buying them from the library is one of the best ways available. And through, again, I'm a little bit biased towards Draft2Digital, but Draft2Digital gives you access to 8 of the world's largest library wholesalers. And by the way, I haven't announced it yet, but we're going to announce in about a month's time another library platform that we're going to be getting into, because the belief is to get your books into as many different retailers, as many different libraries as possible, so that people who want to consume your content can consume it in the way that's best for them. If you're looking to market to your library and your books are available beyond just Amazon's extended distribution, what you're going to want to do is say, my book is available through Ingram, the world's largest print wholesaler. My ebook is available through, Overdrive, Baker & Taylor, Hoopla, Adillo, BorrowBox, depending on where you are in the world. But starting locally with your local library. Now, here's the other thing. You've written a book, you've published a book, you've come to Vegas, or you're an awesome person watching it online. You've invested time in learning about what it is that makes being a successful author, and you're learning and helping other authors and all that. Your library probably has a need for somebody in your community, for writers who aren't lucky enough to know about this great conference, who aren't lucky enough to be able to get out and do the great things you're doing here. You can bring that back to your local libraries. You can bring back things you learned. You can bring back stuff that you learned from researching for your books and offer to your library a session. I do tons of sessions at my local library helping people self-publish because I work in the industry and have for a long time. How do I self-publish? Where do I begin? And when you help people like that, you prevent those people from getting lured by the pirates and the thieves and all of the sharks that are out there that are looking to take money from authors without really providing them value because their business is selling, not helping. And so you can bring that to your library. I do, in October, talks about going on ghost hunts and research. How do you research spooky stuff? Well, I have to pack, depends, because I wet myself, because I get scared so easy. But those are some of the techniques and the tools that I don't. I'm just kidding. But I can talk about stuff that went into my books. I can talk about the creation of my books. I can apply so many things that I've learned in the business of being a writer to bring to my library. And 9 times out of 10, the rules of reciprocity say that if you're an awesome person giving some great value to your library, the library is going to think of you. The library is going to recommend your books. Every time I do talks at libraries, they bring my books in to the libraries. They bring the digital books, they bring the audio books, they bring the print books into the library. Any other Canadians in the room, if you're in the library systems and you're not familiar with public lending right in Canada, PLR, public lending right in Canada and in 32 other countries in the world, not the US, you can actually make money for your books being in public library systems. Please make a note to check out the public lending rights system. I get a really nice 4-figure check every year from them just for having my books in library after I've already made money selling them. The library is part of the community, so are some other businesses, and I, again, with my experience working in the book industry in Canada as the president of the Canadian Booksellers Association, I've always been very passionate about supporting local businesses and local partnerships. Some ideas. Okay, my books are print on demand, which is great and wonderful for us. I didn't have to print 10,000 copies that I have in my basement. But they're non-returnable and they can order them from Ingram. What's a bookseller to do? Because most booksellers are never going to want to carry books that are non-returnable. Well, because of relationships I've made with some local booksellers over the years, I actually have had bookstores order my books fully non-returnable, only because they know, because we've had a long relationship and the booksellers who work there are readers of my books and love them, they're going to hand sell those books. And that's a lot of what happens in in-person events. Here's some examples of, now Owl's Nest Books is in Calgary, and I have good friends who've done some amazing things there. Epic Books is a great bookstore on Locke Street in Hamilton, and I now live in Waterloo where the great people at Wordsworth Books do. But here's a couple ideas of working with my local library. I've made deals with the local library that if you wanted to get a signed book from me, and it's hard for me, it's easy for me to sell ebooks online because there's mechanisms to make that easy, but the logistics of drop shipping without a partner like Book Vault, which we don't yet have in Canada, can be done through a local bookstore. Order my book through Epic Books. Jamie will call me. If you place an order, she'll order the book in from wherever she gets it from, even if it's non-returnable. I'll come in and sign it, and they have the mechanism to ship those, so I'm supporting my local bookstore. You can do the same sort of thing even without the physical aspect. You can use bookshop.org and connect it to your local bookstore. Let them know that you've done that. Say, I love your local bookstore. I'm a local author. I want to let you know that on my online bookshop, when I send people to buy the ebooks through Bookshop, it's linked to your store so I can support you. Let them know that you're there for them as well. The other things I do with Wordsworth Books is, for example, for some of my traditionally published books, I can order them from the publisher for 40% off, but that's 40% off, which is great. So, $10 book costs me $6 and I make the $4 on that. But I can go ahead and ask David at Wordsworth to order a bunch of books for me. Like, okay, I'll take 20 of this and 20 of that and 20 of that and 20 of the other thing. We've negotiated a deal in advance that when I order those books through him, he gives me the staff discount of 30%. So he's only making 10% on those books, but he never even has to open the boxes. They're pass-through sales for him. So I'm now spending my money not at a corporate office for the publisher in Toronto. I'm spending my money through a local business. They're making a smaller margin, but they're making money, so I'm giving money to that business. And the other thing too, of course, is that also helps because they report those sales to the Nielsen Bookscan in the US or BookNet Canada in Canada, and it goes through as a sale. Now, okay, I'll get $1 from the traditional publisher a year later off of the royalty statement, but I'm supporting a local business, I'm giving them business, and also when I'm in the store often buying my boxes of books and stuff like that, I usually find something else because these guys are awesome at recommending books to me and stuff, but I have that relationship. Another thing I've done with local bookstores, and I've done this with chain and with indie bookstores, and there are, especially Barnes & Noble is a lot more dynamic and they have a lot more autonomy than they've ever had before, which is great for authors, is it because the book people in the store can now have more power and it's not just controlled out of New York. Sometimes I've done book signings where I want them to bring in like 50 copies, and if it's non-returnable because it's a self-published print-on-demand book, I say, tell you what, at the end of the event, if you don't sell out or maybe they want to keep them for a couple more weeks, give me a call, I'll come back and buy them from you. And ideally, I'd love to get a discount if it's 10, 20, or 30%, but then that way the bookstore's not taking all the risk. I'm a partner in that, and I consider that part of a marketing investment. You spend a lot on Amazon ads, why wouldn't you spend money in your local bookstore? Sometimes you don't make money on Amazon ads, sometimes you're not, that's not gonna work. But if you're in it as a partnership with your local bookstore, that's another thing you can do. So considering that, if you're traditionally published, it's way easier because that returns is taken care of. One of the things we forget about wide publishing is that trends come and go on Amazon, things work and they don't work and they change over time, but free never stopped working. It used to work really cool on Amazon, right? Remember you'd make your books free and then they would rank up high and then you'd flip them back to sale and you would still rank, and then they said, oh, people are gaming the system, let's fix it. Let's change it. But free still works everywhere. Now I shared this when I worked at Kobo for 5 years, and this was shared publicly, so it's okay for me to share it because it's already out there in the universe. This is an example of a 6-book series, and this was typical based on the studies that this retailer did. And speaking to other retailers and even looking at other systems, it's very similar, it's very typical what the read-through is. What you're seeing here is you're seeing book 1 in a series that was promoted. I can't even read my own slide. Does that say 12,000? Can anyone read it? I think it's about 12,000. It's very blurry, my goodness. This is how many people in the first 6 weeks opened the book after downloading it. Most people who download a free book never even open it. So that's the biggest challenge you have is, and this is why, and I'm gonna go back to, you get a BookBub. Yay, I had 50,000 downloads of book 1, and then I ran another BookBub 9 months later, and I only got 10,000 downloads. Here's the thing we can't measure, but I'm willing to bet does happen. Last year, a lot of people downloaded your book, and then you paid again, you got another promo, but you only got 10,000 downloads of the book because it's less impactful because some of them already got it. But some of the people who see your book cover in the BookBub ad or whatever that newsletter is, see the book and go, oh, that looks good, and they forgot. I do that all the time. Oh, that beer looks good, I want to try it. Well, I've had 6,543 unique beers, not that I track or anything, but I forgot that I had that beer. The app tells me, which is nice, but that's the thing that happens. Oh, that book looks good, and they go to buy it, and they go, oh, I already downloaded it. Oh, it's already on my Kindle, it's already on my Nook, it's already on my Kobo. And so they may not download it, but you may have prompted them to read the book. So doing those repetitive free promos may actually serve you better in the long run. And I'm sorry, but I can't measure it for you. This is just a gut feeling. But what I do know from actual stats is that very few of those people open it up. What Jim Bain said about book covers years and years ago, which is still true, is your book cover is a billboard. It's an advertisement for your book. And as we know in marketing, sometimes it takes that 7 impressions before it actually has an impact, which is why Coke and Pepsi still have billboards everywhere. That number there is about less than 300 people who opened the book. Less than 2,000 people opened the book, less than 300 people actually finished reading that book in the first 6 weeks of the study. So let's look at the numbers here. The readers who completed is about 350, and then you have some other stats. Total series units sold, purchased with a read, where they actually read the book, and purchased without a read, where they actually purchased one or more books in the rest of the series without a read. The free to buy conversion, which is pretty typical, is 1.4% in this case. The open to buy, the people who actually opened the book but then went on to buy, as you can see, they purchased without having finished reading the book. That meant they opened it. 10.7%. So it gets higher. And then the people who actually read book one and finished it in 6 weeks. Now the typical stats were anywhere between 45 and 55%. In this particular case, it's about 52% of those people. So the trick is to get them to read the book. And the way to get them to read the book is to remind them of the book, even if they maybe already have it. So that's one of the ways free works. Of course, other ways to leverage free, and I do this as well. I bring books to shows all the time. I have these print books that are $15, $20, $25. The traditionally published ones tend to be the ones that cost a bit more. But it's hard. It's hard to get people to open their wallet for $20 and $25. So I've taken advantage of like little chapbooks, like that active reader book is only about 16,000 words, so it's only about 80 pages. It's got 3 short stories in it and some notes, and obviously it has cover images of my other comp titles from my library. And that's one of the things I do. I sell it for $5. It only costs me maybe $3.50 to make. I'm not really making much margin on it, but once they open their wallet and they're willing to give me $5, then maybe they buy something else. Or, here's the other cool thing I can do with it. I can give that away. If I gave away a $20 full-length novel, it's going to cost me more in the cost, but I can give away a lot more of those little samplers. So again, you can use free in different ways. Obviously, free for newsletters and stuff like that, and BookFunnel. Other things I've done is the cards from BookFunnel, selling ebooks in person, but also giving away an ebook if they buy the print book. So that way they can enjoy the signed copy, but then they can enjoy reading it on the platform of their choice. Now, promos and ads are just a huge, huge business. There are way smarter than me people who talk about it, but there's so many different platforms available. And promo stacking is probably one of the ways that I think can work really, really well by basically leveraging a combination of newsletter on day one, then trying to win a BookBub lottery and getting a BookBub deal, but not always easy for me to get. I get, I think, 1 in every 18 that I apply for. There are some people who get 1 in every 2 or 1 in every 1. But that's the case. But there are other platforms, Written Word Media, Crave Books, places to do it. Even some of the Goodreads giveaways for the print books are very expensive, but sometimes it makes a difference if you get the books into the hands of the right people. But there's some really, really great opportunities where you can pay, and I'm sure you know how newsletters operate, but this is the reminder of me. When I run an Amazon ad, when I run a Facebook ad, that's not just money that I'm spending, but it's also a lot of my time and energy in doing analytics, and I'm not all that good at that. But if I can pay a company and they have a list of people they're going to send my book to, I can move on to writing. I can move on to other marketing tasks. I can sort of decide to spend that money. The other thing, and I'm just going to go back to free books as well, is one of the stats is that when you sell a book on a Kobo or a Nook or a Kindle or whatever, and somebody's reading it in public, sitting in the hallway here, or not a lot of readers at the casino except for us, but reading it in public somewhere, you can't tell when they're reading it on a phone or on an ebook reader, but you can tell what book they're reading when it's print. So sometimes those print books that people are reading are marketing while they're going, because the other stat about the print book industry is a print book is, on average, handled by 7 different people. And it's so much easier when somebody finishes a book and they love it and they put it in the hands of someone else. Yeah, you're losing a sale, but you're gaining a reader. And that reader could be someone who's with you for a long time. So that is one of those investments. So this marketing is a similar passive sort of thing for me. It's not passive because we plan it, we do the promo stacks. I often will do 5 or 7 in a row for a week. Erin Wright, good friend of mine who created the Wide for the Win movement, Erin likes to cycle through them. So she goes through an 8-week cycle period where once a week she hits a different site and cycles through her list and does that so that she can do that repetitive, and that works for her, but she's a lot more organized and plans things out. I tend to batch it. But those are some of the great ways you can do it. The other thing a lot of people forget about is Thinking big, thinking about box sets. Because when we're focused only on Amazon, we think that we have to price our book between $2.99 and $9.99 in order to get a 70% deal. The reality beyond Amazon is that's the only retailer that limits that. Every other major retailer, Google, Apple, Nook, Kobo, Smashwords, every other major retailer gives you 70%, way beyond $9.99. So you're not limited, because if you do put, an 8-book box set together, you want to sell it for, more than $9.99, because alone maybe the books would cost $35. You're actually going to hurt yourself to price it higher because you're only making 35%. So don't publish the big box set on Amazon. Your books are there, your smaller box sets are there. Customers can still buy it. You're not taking anything away from them. Amazon's preventing you from offering them something new, but why not offer it elsewhere? When I worked at Kobo, we had a box set that was a $34 box set from an author who had 12 of her books in it, and it actually outsold Gone Girl, well, at least for 3 hours that day. But it outsold the best-selling book in the world at the time because it was featured in a Kobo Writing Life box set promo. And she was making 70% of that. Well, she was 30% off the price. So I think she made about $21 per unit sale, and it was the #1 best-selling book on Kobo for several hours out of that day. So she did okay for herself. But again, the other thing to remember about the box sets, especially with the retailers like Apple and with Kobo and with Nook, is the people who work there are book nerds. They're book lovers. A lot of them come from the traditional industry, and they work with the big publishers. What does a big publisher charge for a single novel ebook? $12 to $15? Your box set with 8 books in it that sells for $19.99 is going to give them, and Kobo does show this, shows you the hours it will take to read this book. I could be reading for a week, reading your entire series for just a couple dollars more than a regular priced book from HarperCollins or Penguin Random House. So when they go to decide what books they're going to feature in a promo, do they want to feature in this 30% off promo your $4.99 book at 30% off, or do they want to feature your $29 book at 30% off? What's a bigger value to the customer? And considering that the retailer is just keeping their 30% anyway, what's a bigger value to the retailer? If featuring your $4.99 book or your $12.99 book, which one's going to make them more money if they decide which one to feature? Those box sets can make a big difference. On Amazon, the inmates run the asylum. On those other retailers that I mentioned, there's a lot of human curation and merchandisers. It doesn't mean they don't have algorithms. They have great algorithms, but they also have awesome people who are making decisions. And those are some of the business decisions that they make when they're looking at the value for their customers. The other thing that works in general, and think about ways you can do this in your own community, from your own high school, former high school, college, community groups, church groups, whatever it is. And obviously, if it's church groups, maybe sweet romance works a lot better than active romance. But those are some of the things that you're going to want to think about. But defining yourself, as my good friend, Canadian science fiction author Robert J. Sawyer says, define yourself as a big fish in a small pool. That can make a huge difference. Because I am nobody in the big world of publishing. That's not true. I'm pretty awesome myself, because I have to own that. But I'm not as well known as Stephen King. But I'm the best-selling horror author from Sudbury, Ontario. Most of you don't know where Sudbury, Ontario is, but that's okay. They kind of like me. This is an example of Rob, Quantum Night. This was another example of where Quantum Night was purchased by Penguin Random House, but they only purchased North American rights. Rob ended up taking the book and self-publishing it and selling way more copies than them. But using that small town, I've been able to get on the front page of the local newspaper and become a star in that local community. That's a really amazing thing. The last thing is coupon codes. Did you know that you can do DIY coupon codes on the Google Play Store? Did you know that you can make your own coupon codes with BNN Press when you're publishing there? Did you know that you can make your own coupon codes in the Smashwords store? Did you know that you can request them through Kobo Writing Life? Did you know that you can request them if you publish with Apple, although they are a little bit limited, so you have to be very careful about how, because there's a time limit on them. But you can create coupon codes that don't mean you don't have to change the price, but you can give special deals to special people. And don't forget to think beyond the book. Thinking beyond the book is so important. An example for some of my haunted books are postcards that I can use as free giveaways. I see people like you're doing cosplay. A good friend of mine, Richard, who writes fantasy, goes to medieval fairs dressed up as a knight, and he's the only book guy there. So anyone who's a reader who's into medieval and fantasy and stuff, he's going to sell a lot of books. I talked my partner Liz into dressing up as a haunted nurse when Haunted Hamilton first came out. And I've even sold rights through voicemap.com of haunted GPS ghost-enabled tours based on, I sold the rights to a publisher, but I also had this available where people can download and go on a self-guided tour. And I've even taken a dollar store flashlight, a postcard, and a little booklet on how to do your own ghost walks, combined it with Creepy Capital, Canada's Ottawa, Canada's capital city, and sold it as a summer vacation pack, thinking beyond just the ebook, just beyond the book alone. I hope I've given you some ideas. I realize there's less than 4 minutes left, and my apologies, but if you have any questions, I hope to help you. And I do promise to answer questions online afterwards when I'm not at the conference. So thank you guys so much. And I see there's a question coming up right now.
Okay, so that was loud. I have to also compete with traditional publishing since I'm middle grade, so I'm curious if postcard advertising still works for libraries and bookstores, or is it searching for emails the way to go?
Both, Jennifer. So both of those things will work. And what I do think is trad publishers are doing it, but not a lot of indie authors are doing it. So how can you stand above and beyond by putting in that extra? And having that physical evidence is a lot better than an email that they're going to lose, if that helps. That's my opinion, of course. Yeah.
When you're talking about free still works, are you talking about perma-free or just the free promos?
Both. Both perma-free, and if you're not comfortable with perma-free, temporary free. Free still works, baby. Another question coming up?
Yes, hi there, I'm from Ottawa.
Yay!
So I had a couple of questions. One of them is that if I have a book in Kindle Unlimited.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a 3-month term.
Yeah.
When that ends, I take it out.
Okay.
Is there, through Draft to Digital, is there a way for me to put up my book for sale so it gets widespread use, my Kindle book?
Yeah.
And at times where I could set it for free, like.
Yeah, anytime.
So I can have like 5 days of free.
Yep, you can
or whatever.
schedule price promos, and all the other retailers accept it. Amazon may price match only in the US and the UK. They won't price match in Canada half the time, from my experience.
Okay.
But
okay.
yeah, that's the challenge. But then getting them to flip back can be a bit of a. So there's always going to be an Amazon lag. But yeah, you can, and it's up to you at any time you want.
So that gives me the option then of taking it out of Kindle Select, but still offering it for free at certain times through the Draft to Digital.
Yeah, that's a great option.
Yeah.
And I do it regularly. But there is a lag. Sometimes it's free for an extra 2 weeks on Amazon. Oh well, I got more readers.
Right, exactly. Okay, so that was one thing. The question I had though is you mentioned about how we could support local bookstores.
Yes.
And by having them order our physical print books.
Yeah.
Now, I have a local bookstore, and I have one of my series in their bookstore right
Awesome.
now. I have no
Congrats.
idea if it's selling, but it's there.
Have you gone in and signed copies and told people to go buy it at that bookstore?
I have not.
Yes, you have.
Okay,
You
I
say, "Mark,
have.
yes,
Okay,
yes,
I have.
yes,
Okay,
you
I have.
What bookstore was it in Ottawa?
It's actually in Gatineau. It's right beside Ottawa.
Okay.
So it's like one of the suburbs.
Go talk to them. See what you can do to help them sell more of your books. It's a partnership.
Yeah, yeah. I'm happy to work with them, but I'm wondering what did you say about having them order the books for me through, let's say, Amazon or wherever?
Well, not
KDP?
Amazon. They're not going to want to order from the enemy, but from Ingram or someplace like that.
Okay, they could order it from Ingram.
If it's available.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
And then that way, I could have them order multiple copies, and then
Yeah.
I could purchase it from
Yeah,
them?
if they're
Is
willing,
that-
yeah, you have to talk to them in advance and make sure they're willing to give you some sort of discount off
Yeah.
retail. Otherwise, I mean, you can pay full price, but it's nice
Yeah.
for you to have some margin to play with. And I do that for when I want to resell them at book fairs and stuff like that.
Right, if you want to have some with you, and you
Yeah.
can get them to order them rather
Yeah.
than yourself. and
Yeah,
then-
but I don't just place the order, I talk to the manager first to make sure
Yeah.
they're okay with the idea, and then
Yeah.
once I have the relationship, it's an ongoing, it's a great relationship.
Right.
Hey, David, I need some of these books. Great, I'll call you when they're in.
And he'll order
Yeah.
like 10 or 30 copies through
Yeah.
Ingham Spark or whatever, and then when they come
Yeah.
in, you pick them up. And
Yeah,
pay
and
for them.
everyone wins.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And that's 5 seconds. 4,
We have
3.
one online question.
One online question.
It says, can you create coupon codes for Apple, Google if you don't publish with them direct? I publish with them with direct.
Yeah, you can request coupon codes through Apple through Draft to Digital. Just email customer service. And if you're going to Google, I mean, you have to have a direct account anyways, to even if you're using a third party. So yes, you can. So there. Thank you guys so much.